ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder. Today is Patch Day, and we're going to be taking a look at the crown, or one of the crowns rather, of Patch Day, and that is the MiG-21bis. The MiG-21bis has come basically as a new addition, and it's sort of a statement from Gaijin that the MiG-21 SMT and the MF weren't enough, which is absolutely correct. The MF and the MiG-21 SMT don't suffice against the Phantom Es and the EJs, and therefore we've basically gotten the BIS to sort of make up a little bit of that ground. Has it made up that ground? Short answer is kind of yes, and the long answer is kind of no. So, let's actually talk about why the MiG-21bis is an upgrade over the SMT. Well, first of all is the obvious: you've got an extra 2 missiles. This allows you to basically carry 2 R3Rs or an extra 2 R60s if that's what you kind of want. I haven't had the chance to check out the R13Ms yet, but apparently they're not too bad either. So, a lot has actually changed in this patch, so when we get to the battle I'll sort of talk about that then. But the MiG-21bis also comes with, more importantly, flares. This is probably the biggest change. It doesn't get as many flares as the Phantom, but it certainly does get enough flares to allow it to escape a couple of missiles. It's not as much of a get-out-of-jail-free card as the Phantoms were last patch, simply because the missiles in general have been nerfed, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. As you can see, we're on the Dagger engine 6.0, and it's kind of pretty. It's a little bit subtly more beautiful. And of course you can see the improved speed and the little wing wobble that you get when you get to higher speeds. The MiG-21bis, in my experience, has seen speeds almost all the way to 1400 kilometers on the deck. So that is something that you should definitely keep in mind. It does outperform in terms of speed the F4E and the F4EJ on the deck, which I don't know how I feel about. I think that the MiG-21bis may or may not have been too powerful. We'll see as the patch draws out. I don't really think it's that fun to play though, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So, let's talk about top tier in general. As you can see, the battle is starting to sort of happen, and I'm making my way over to some targets. Now, I believe I picked out 6 R60s in this particular matchup, just because I felt like it. Now, the R60s, and from what I'm gathering, missiles in general don't seem to track quite as well as they used to. There's something about it. I don't quite know what it is. Maybe someone could do some data mining for me, because I genuinely am stumped as to what's going on here. The missiles, especially R60s, seem to track like AIM-9Es. They don't seem to be nearly as dangerous as they used to be. And this is, it sort of came as a real shock to me, if you will, because the R60s were really devastating killing weapons in the past 2 patches. Less so this patch, but definitely before BVR, oh my god, the R60s were very, very strong. You can see there's a little delay there now that follows the sort of inertia of the plane. I kind of like that. That's a nice little touch, and that also changes those sort of very tight-end dogfights. It makes it a little bit harder to obtain a missile lock. I found that Missile Thunder has sort of gotten a little bit less prominent over this patch, and you can see why. And I can kind of understand why. Missile Thunder is a little bit difficult for a couple people to, or for some members of the community to sort of get a grip on, get a hold of. The addition of flares also makes it a little bit easier to dodge these sorts of things. But of course, I'm sort of killing people here that are kind of asleep at the wheel. They're not really watching what they're doing. It seems like they're getting caught up in a little bit of tunnel vision, which is understandable. This kind of stuff, happens at top tier. And I've actually gone 3 for 3, which is a rarity. I've never actually gone 3 for 3 up until this particular point with R60s past the BVR patch, which is kind of remarkable. You don't really get that sort of situation. You normally get 1 or 2 of them, sometimes me being a little bit too ambitious, sometimes it's the missile just deciding it doesn't want to track, and I don't understand why. It just does that sometimes, and that's something you have to keep in mind when you do fly the MiG-21, and in fact, it's probably going to happen when you fly the Phantom as well. I guess we can say 4 for 4 now, which is kind of very impressive actually. It has not happened to me in a long time. And that's kind of because I've been taking out opponents that are, like I said, asleep at the wheel. I, that's kind of just how it's been going, and I don't really know why people are sort of this asleep. Maybe they've been grinding the patch for too long. Regardless, the MiG-21bis as a plane, it performs quite well. It actually does perform very, very well. It's accelerating quite well. It retains its energy fairly well in a straight line. In a turn, obviously, it goes without saying that this thing dumps a lot of speed, and that's due to the sheer amount of maneuverability. It's kind of those, high AOA fighters. It's just something that those particular planes do. So, how do you actually play this thing? Honestly, it's very, very difficult to actually talk about that with any sort of certainty. I'm going to be honest, I had a lot of time sort of figuring out, experimenting with the MiG-21, and the only thing I can guarantee is that if you get yourself into an early dogfight, you're going to have 6 or 7 Phantoms dogpile you, and for me, that really, really makes me frustrated. It's something that I hate having to deal with. It's something that I often put myself into as a situation, and it's not something that you should be aiming to do. Ideally, you are perhaps one of the last to go into battle, but it doesn't always work that way, and it kind of shouldn't always work that way. So I suppose in this particular spot, I'm going to sort of suggest a couple of things that maybe Gaijin could consider adding to top tier jets, or at least adjusting with top tier jets. So one of the things that I found was that I was being spiked by enemies that I couldn't see, and I found that a lot of the time they were spiking friendlies as well. Now I get that RWR is directional, but I would personally like to know if it's me that's being spiked or if it's a friendly that's being spiked. I understand that it isn't entirely historically accurate, but if you're going to play a game that is entirely historically accurate, I would like to point you to DCS first of all, and second of all, I don't see a way that this is a sort of thing that we could do that puts gameplay first. I'm personally of the opinion that gameplay should come slightly above historical accuracy. I understand that planes and flight models and the flight model of a missile should definitely be true to its historical values, but things like radar, things like just little things, little mechanics, if you will, like the little radar that we get at the top right hand side of the screen, things like RWR. I think we can take a little bit of artistic liberty here, and perhaps do a couple of little things. I'd like to suggest things. Do let me know if I'm wrong in the comments. Don't sort of hang me for it, if you will. I'd just like to know someone's opinion on this sort of thing, because this is kind of how I feel. I would like to see some sort of, some sort of rudimentary IFF. I understand that planes like the MiG-21 didn't have them in real life. I would like to, though, see if I'm being spiked by a friendly, if I'm being spiked at all, if I'm the one that's being targeted. I really want to know that sort of stuff, because that helps with gameplay, and that helps with sort of being able to discern what to do in a gameplay situation. Because at the end of the day, you're here to play the game. All the historical stuff, all the shiny stuff wears off after about 30 minutes, and then you're there for the gameplay. So the thing that's going to make people stick isn't the sort of historical immersion as such. Nice almost ram there, but regardless, it's going to be the things that keep people there. The gameplay is going to have to be core, and you're going to have to put a focus on the gameplay, which is why I sort of lean that way. I guess that's just me. Let me know if I'm wrong in the comments section below, but that's a big thing. I would really like to be able to discern where the radar is sort of coming from, if it's coming from a friendly, if it's coming from an enemy, if it's coming from me at all. That's the main thing for me. I would also like a little bit more customization on the RWR. Personally, I liked it the way it was. I find that if I was going to be aggressive, I would look to my radar first, and then I would look to, say, my airspeed, my altitude, how many missiles I have left, that sort of thing. If I want to be defensive, if I want to look to where I need to maneuver out of the way, I'm going to look at the little radar, little map thing on the top right hand corner of the screen, and of course I'm going to look at the RWR on the bottom right hand corner of the screen, and by sort of mixing them around you're kind of throwing everyone off a little bit. I understand that it's easy to get used to, but I would kind of like to be able to customize that, and I think that would be really nice. On top of that, the little sort of radar square thingies, the little lines that go across the top of the screen, I want the option to turn them off because personally I find them quite annoying. I don't like them and I wish that they would go, but I understand that some other people might feel the other way about that, which is natural of course, and having the option to customize is never a bad thing. So, now that we're done with that, I'm going to show you or walk through how I roughly play this particular plane. So I've gone for a little climb, I've gone for a head-on missile, I've got it. The head-on missile thing kind of works between 5 and 3 kilometers. If you're firing it within maybe 2 kilometers, you're getting a little bit close because they're starting to get into gun range, especially for an F4E that has Vulcans. You're not going to survive any longer than that. So here's a missile Andy over here. I'm going to launch an R60 towards him. He's not paying attention, he's kind of asleep at the wheel, not really sort of looking where he's going. And speaking of not looking where he's going, there's me who's about to sort of get jumped on by an FG... was it an FG1? It's a British Phantom regardless, an FGR2. So I dodge out of the way of that, and now I'm basically looking for another target. I've got a missile basically ready to go. I can see this F4C here coming straight vertically towards me. And it looks like he's going to try and stick onto me, which is a really stupid move because in a Phantom, the last thing you want to be doing is turning with a MiG. Even though you can maybe sometimes get on the 6 of a MiG, there's not a lot you can do once you've made about 2 or 3 turns. And here I am in the upper hand here. All I have to do is stop him from cancer rolling, and he's doing exactly that for me. He's heading straight to the ground. He knows he's screwed up. And all I need to do now is send a missile his way. There it goes, and it makes beautiful contact. You don't turn with a MiG. Whatever you do, if you're in a Phantom, don't turn in against a MiG. Also, don't be slow against a MiG, because that is an absolute death sentence, unless, of course, the R60s don't quite track like they used to. You can see what I mean by they kind of track like AIM-9Es. I don't get it. I genuinely don't understand why. If someone could do some data mining, I would be forever appreciative. Anyway, we're going to move on to this F4C, and as you can see, I have basically closed the distance. This plane accelerates beautifully, and it's something that F4C pilots need to work out. You need to make sure that you don't get caught off guard like this. That's a big no-no for a Phantom pilot. I would recommend working in 2x2s. Working together like that, it was probably your best bet. And once again, I pick up myself another close-in missile kill. And that is pretty much game. There's not a whole lot of enemies left, and as soon as you start to lose opponents, you start to sort of see that sort of dogpile effect. One thing I would kind of like to see is a 7v7 for jets. I have been advocating for this for a very, very long time, but one of the things that really pisses me off is having 7 or 8 people dogpile you, whether it's just because it's me, or because I'm in a shiny new plane, or just because I'm in the wrong spot at the wrong time. I understand the latter sort of, but I would very much like to see a sort of reduction in the number of players, especially if you want to take this into a historical form argument. You can always argue that in general, on average, the engagements between say Vietnamese MiGs and American Phantoms was generally in a 2v2 or a 4v4, or I guess sometimes I'm not really sure, maybe a 6v6 or an 8v8, but generally there's always a couple of them, not hordes and hordes like we have here, or 15 or 16 or 10 that we have in game currently. And I think that would sort of stem the tide of the absolute slew of missiles that are in the game at the moment. If you think about it, if everyone is in a MiG-21bis and an F4E or an F4EJ, you think about it, 6 missiles for the MiGs and 8 missiles for the Americans and the Japanese. That's a lot of missiles in the game. So I guess in order to sort of stem that, you could reduce the number of players in the game, and whilst that would reduce the number of targets, I think that would clear up the sky a little bit, give everyone a little bit more freedom, and overall be a really, really good thing. But overall, as an upgrade to the SMT, I think the MiG-21bis is more than welcome. As for top tier jets itself, I still think it needs a bit of work. It's not quite where it was a few patches ago, and I really, really hope that it just gets a little bit better. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the MiG-21bis. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you next time.